All right, so welcome everyone to another week of mindfulness, another week of sitting together in the present moment and exploring what there is to explore in this instant. I would like to start by acknowledging that I'm broadcasting from the lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people and to pay my respects to their elders past and present and emerging, and any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people on the call today or watching on catch up. All right, I've got a couple of readings that I found this week that I wanted to share, and then I'll take us into our practice. So the first reading is from, it's a bit hard to see, Prosperous Heart by Julia Cameron, who also wrote The Artist's Way, if anyone's come across that. And the quote, which I've put in the email today and in the Facebook post for people in the group as well. I just wanted to read it. It's from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And the quote goes like this: "We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we're willing to work very hard to get a job, a car, a house, and so on. But we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment, the only moment there is for us to be alive. Every breath we take, every step we make can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. We need only to be awake, alive in the present moment." So there's two things that I really like about this quote. And the first is that it draws our attention to what we value as humans. And if you look at what we value in terms of investing our time into over the course of a lifetime, and it becomes obvious pretty quickly that what we not instinctively, but what we culturally value is, those things that are mentioned: education, possessions, money, transport, those kinds of things. That there's nothing wrong with those things, first of all. Those things are fine. What we often don't invest our time into, though, is our own happiness, our own enjoyment of this life. And I think what he so beautifully says in the last paragraph, that every breath we take, every step we make can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. We need only to be awake, alive in the present moment. Now, if we live in that way, we don't need to disregard the first part. We don't need to disregard the diploma and the house and the car. We can still work towards those, but we can work towards them in a different way and with a different energy. And that's what I want to explore with you tonight. And that leads me to a second quote, which is from my own book, Mindfulness for Life, which some of you might have read. And it goes like this. This is the very start of the book. So, the most important lesson: everybody knows that everything happens now. There is no other moment in time, and that the past and the future are really just thoughts or memories or imaginings. We all get that on a conceptual level, but most people don't understand it. Most people don't live it. And that is why human beings are lost, why we are stressed, unhappy, frustrated, and why we live our lives unaware of the power, the peace, and the happiness that is within us all the time. I really like that quote. I don't remember writing it, but that's what writing books is like for me. But I really like that quote because it draws our attention to the happiness that's inside us all the time. So to this concept that, or the reality that happiness is not something that we earn. It's something that we notice within ourselves, and then we can express through actions, through our lives in the world. And so what I want to do tonight is not achieve anything. I don't want to learn anything. I don't want to teach you anything. I want to sit together with you and look for and notice the happiness that's already inside us. To notice the joy, the peace, the space, and the simplicity that's in all of us now, and to just sit and enjoy that. Now, as we do that, we're also going to notice things that don't look like happiness or don't look like peace. We'll notice thoughts that are challenging. We'll notice feelings that we might not like. We'll notice images, memories, all sorts of things that seem like a disturbance or a distraction from this happiness that we're seeking. And what I invite you to do tonight is to just sit with those things too. Because the happiness, what we're calling the happiness that we're getting back in touch with, is not affected by those thoughts and feelings. It's what stands and observes all of that. So that's what we'll be getting in touch with tonight. I'm going to try and keep the practice really simple and straightforward tonight. And if anything that I say doesn't make sense to you in your experience, then feel free to just notice that and explore your own experience to see if that is actually true. And also feel free to disregard anything that seems to be confusing or isn't helpful to you right now. That's totally fine. We use lots of different metaphors and lots of different practices just purely because everything is going to be useful for a different person in a different way. So I want to invite you to start with to either close your eyes, find somewhere to look where you won't get distracted, and just take a moment to find your breath. Just make sure that the body is still breathing. So as we notice what it feels like to breathe in, and we notice what it feels like to breathe out, we're taking a step out of the place we've been living most of the day. So probably most of us, most of the day, we've been living in the land of story, where everything that we see, we hear, we experience is then interpreted, is then judged and evaluated, and is then turned into a story of good or bad or right or wrong. I want, I don't want. We're stepping out of that right now into pure noticing, to just feeling. What does it feel like to breathe in? What does it feel like to breathe out? And on that out breath, I invite you to really sigh, really let your shoulders go, let your body drop as much as it wants, let yourself sink into the chair, into the couch. Just let everything go just for one breath. All the problems of the mind and the past and the future will still be there if you need them after this breath. Just for this breath, just notice, feel the body sink. And you might even want to just smile to yourself as you do that. And whatever the breath is like, whether it's shallow or deep, fast or slow, doesn't matter. Just feel it and notice it. And on that out breath, we just put away the past. We put away the future. Just put them to one side. And with them, we put any evaluation, any judgment, anything that's not just breathing and noticing. Just putting outside for a moment. And so if you imagine that you've got a dog in your house that keeps barking and it's disturbing you, and you quite like the dog, but just right now, you just want to put it out in the backyard and just let it run around. Just let it be and just enjoy peace and quiet inside. And that's what we're doing with thoughts of past, thoughts of future, those judgments and evaluations. And just as you might still hear the dog barking outside, and you could be disturbed by that, so we might still hear thoughts arising. We might still notice words and pictures coming into awareness. So we don't need to get rid of those words and pictures. We're just leaving them aside and keeping our attention on the breath and on this wonderful out breath, this wonderful, expansive release in the out breath. And any time that you find yourself lost in a thought, caught up with words and pictures, just come back to feeling the breath, to really noticing all the sensations of that. Noticing the air coming in through your mouth or nose, Noticing the body moving, noticing the way your chest expands and contracts and what that feels like. Perhaps even noticing that with all that's happening, breath, thoughts, the sensations, that you're the awareness. It's there in the background, just watching it all. So as we sit and we breathe and we connect with the breath, we connect with this moment, we can start to notice a few things about the breath and about our experience. The first is that what we call the past and what we call the future are actually only ever here as thoughts. They're not present in our experience. We have what we call memory. We have what we call projection, and both are imagination. Both are not real here and now. And sometimes those thoughts might seem useful practically, but they can also cost us our connection with this peace, this moment. So we can notice that. And when we get drawn back into a thought, get lost in it, we can notice how that feels. Notice how the body responds, whether the body reacts as if that is healthy and natural. As we sit and we breathe, we sink into the chair, we can really get in touch with the body and really start to listen to it, start to notice what's arising within it. And every sensation that's there inside you now is part of this. It's part of this moment. Again, we don't need to call that sensation anything. Don't need to label it. And whether it's what we usually call physical or it's what we usually call emotional, doesn't matter. Right now, we're just breathing, feeling, just watching what is this very instant. Not 1 second ago, not in 1 second's time, just this instant. And so we can notice that we can't be aware of the breath and be lost in thought at the same time. That as soon as we start thinking about a breath, a particular breath, It's already gone. It already exists only as memory. Just like the meal you ate before you came and sat down no longer exists as you remember it. And so we can start to notice that absolutely everything is happening in this space that we call now. And that by the time we notice that it's happening, it's already gone. We notice the breath as it's coming. It's by the time we consider the breath, by the time we think about the breath, it's done. And there's a new one. And so we can sit in the midst of this dynamic process, always moving, always changing, what the Buddha called impermanence, the forever changing. And what we are, what you are, is rock steady, unmoving, watching that impermanence unfold. So let's be clear that everything that exists in reality only exists in this instant. And we can't cling to any of it. Because as soon as we cling to it, as soon as we conceptualize it, what we have is not the thing itself. It's a memory of it. It's a thought of it. So let's continue to breathe and feel the breath, feel the body, and just sink into this moment. Notice how there's no space to worry except as a thought about the future, projection and imagination. And all of us humans think that our projections are really accurate, and we all act as if what the mind projects is going to happen. And any kind of research you see shows that we're terrible at predicting what will happen. We have almost no clue, as we're learning this year with lesson in humility. And we can notice too that even if we predict correctly, we're wasting, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, we're investing time and energy into worrying. We can invest that time and energy into being, into peace. So as this breath comes and as this breath goes, just allow the awareness that you are to settle. And if it gets lost in thought and dragged away, don't worry about it. Just come back to breath, back to body. And we can notice as we sit and as we breathe how much of what we concern ourselves with, how much of what we worry about is all in our imagination. And if I'm imagining something that I think will happen tomorrow, even if that thing ends up happening right now, it's only happening in my imagination. I'm just torturing myself with words and pictures. That's all. As you listen and notice still the breath in the body, you'll sense that this is a very physical process. It's not a mental process. We're not thinking about what's happening and trying to figure it out. We're just directly experiencing it. Just feeling what's arising here and now. And in this timeless space in which we find ourselves, the timeless space that we're in always, I just invite you to leave all conceptual thinking alone. Leave all storytelling alone and just experience what is and just notice yourself solid, steady, immovable, observing, watching here and now. It's not that we've stepped into the present moment here. It's that we've woken up out of a dream. We were dreaming of something we called a past, dreaming of something we called a future. And now we step out of it. And now we not even step out of it, we wake up from it. It's like when you're dreaming at night and then you wake up, where does the dream go? We're actually in the dream. We're just witnessing images, words, pictures and words. So even to call it the present moment, to call this anything, is to move away from it. Because as soon as we start to label and think, separate, we're back in the thought stream, we're back in the story. Don't need a word for this, we can just feel the breath, feel the body. These words are only here, they're only coming to help you to connect with breath and body, to connect with reality, to notice yourself as you are. And ordinarily, we're almost completely caught up in and focused on what is happening now. Completely focused on events and what they mean and where they're heading. But for us, as we sit, as we practice together, our only question of importance in terms of our practice is the question, where is my attention now? And if attention, which it's not really a thing, it doesn't really belong to us, but we can describe it that way. If attention is absorbed in the thought stream, then we suffer because we believe the stories to be true. And if attention is invested in what's arising now, noticing, and if attention is aware of its source, aware of the awareness that you are, then we start to feel this peace and this connection. Even when the dog's growling. And so what we find when we look is that peace doesn't come from the external circumstances, the external world being fixed, resolving itself. It doesn't come from you being fixed, from you becoming a better person or something like that. No, peace is here now when we shift our attention, we shift our energy from thinking, believing, imagining to noticing, to awareness, to being.
Mm.
The dog doesn't agree. And so none of this is something you need to believe, figure out. All we need to do, all we can do, is to notice what is, to notice what's true in our own experience. And so as we breathe and as we feel the body, feel the breath, just allow your attention to sink into this moment, to be totally here, totally connected, totally present. And so this very instant becomes the place where we live. This very instant, and we recognize as our home always. Not somewhere that we need to find, cling to, or inhabit. It's just where we already live. Everything's happening now, already. And if you look back through your life, everything has always happened now, because there's nothing else. There's no other place that exists in our experience. There's no place called the past. There's no place called the future. Everything just is exactly as it is, this very instant. So let's finish by just coming back to the breath, making sure it's still there. Taking that breath out, letting your body sigh, letting everything go. Remembering that past and future are just thoughts not here now. Just letting everything go, everything drop. And just coming back to our true place, our true home in this now. And I invite you, when you're ready, to open your eyes if you've got them closed, to stretch, crack those bones if you need to. And just bring your attention back to the group. And you can notice that we can come back, we can come out of what we call the meditation bit, and we can still feel the breath, still here. And we can still feel the body, we can still hear the sounds. And we can go back into past and future and thinking, and I'm sure that we all will at some point. But we can notice that that's really a diversion away from what's natural and normal for us, that it's not. We've grown to think that that's normal, and that noticing and moving into the meditative space is different and unusual. When in fact, this meditative space is what's natural for us. And what's unusual and uncomfortable is the being lost in thought and lost in our heads. So I've said quite a lot. I'm going to stop for a moment and just want to invite people the opportunity for questions or comments or anything that you'd like to share with the group. You're just on mute, Brenda. Yeah. Oh, I think that's... Can you unmute? Ah, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right. There's some lovely nuggets for me in that with this stupidly busy brain. And the very first one that resonated was about putting problems aside because they'll still be there if you need them. And I thought that was really powerful. I thought, yeah, I really think I need an awful lot of these problems that I don't want to need. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good to have that highlighted. Thank you. I can choose whether I need them or not.
Yeah, that's right. And some of them, sometimes they seem really important, and the events might be important, but the things that we do, the thinking and the worrying, often don't actually resolve them. They might even make them worse. So
Mostly never.
mostly never. Like, take your shoes off before you come inside, and then you put them back on if you need them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda.
I was just going to say that I felt very cranky today, all day. So I couldn't really find like the happiness in me at all. So I think tonight's been good.
Yeah.
More peaceful.
So you notice that crankiness there today.
Really, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I always like if I see a bit of sunshine. But we did have sunshine this afternoon, so it wasn't that. I don't know. I think perhaps I was just tired. Yeah, but I did feel, yeah, not my
Yeah.
usual self.
Yeah, and I think
Anyway,
that's
these things happen.
definitely, yeah, and it's good to just notice that and be with that, and it's, you know, we generally then want to escape from that and move into something different.
Yeah.
But in
I
our
like,
practice, feel that's quite okay.
yeah, I like what you said about that. Like to stay with those. You know, don't try and escape them.
Yeah.
True. Did you say that?
Yeah. Yeah. I might
I
have
thought
said
you
it
did.
tonight. I might have said it another night.
Oh, okay, something like that though.
It sounds
Yeah,
good though, so I'll take credit for it for sure.
yeah. Just be a bit gentle with
Thanks.
yourself.
That's it. Thanks, Lovelace.
Thanks, Ollie.
Anyone else like to share? Ask a question?
I found that I got deep into silence actually by just allowing myself to sense the breath and my body. I got deep into silence and I felt some thoughts in the back of my mind that were subtle manipulations of my mind that other people have tried on with me, and I didn't realize they were there. They wouldn't have affected me that much really, but in a subtle way they were there, and in a subtle way they could have like undermined my sense of individual freedom. So I was surprised actually, to be honest, that it had I got so deep into silence doing this that such subtle things like tiny little thoughts I was aware of. So I found that very good.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's interesting when you just slow down and just let everything, you know, unwind a little bit. How some of those quieter voices, that can be those, you know, things like you say, that other people have said to you, or sometimes that, you know, even that voice of intuition or that voice that's quite helpful as well is often drowned out by the same old compulsive thoughts running around and around. So yeah, it's just interesting to notice what happens and notice all the different experiences that we have in the group together. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Karen.
And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's just, can you talk for a little while about like fear? So, yeah, just just fear.
Just fear. Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it?
And some of that fear might be actually of stuff that's happened in the
Yeah.
past when we were kids, and it's got enmeshed in our heads, and some of it's fear that's in the present.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so something really interesting to look at when we look at this is, because we often think there's fear from what happened in the past and we think there's fear from what's happening now. But if we look at what we call what's happening now, it's not usually this instant. It's usually an event that's happening, you know, this week, this month, this year, and my projection of where that's heading. Whereas, you know, fear this instant is usually really instinctive. It's like, you know, jumping out of the way of a car, or getting a fright when something, you know, the dog barks at you and you're not expecting it, or things like that. So yeah, if we really look at that and pull it apart, we can see that actually a lot of what we say is happening now is actually what's happening now is I'm thinking about something that happened recently, so maybe yesterday, day before, last week, and then I'm projecting what's going to happen in an hour or a day or a week. So we're still in that same, it's still that same process as the fear from, something that happened when I was 7 that gets triggered. It's still the same kind of process happening. It feels a lot more reasonable and realistic when it's last week, next week. But what's happening really is we have two things. If we just look at our experience, we have two things happening. So one is that we have thoughts. So there's images coming to mind, images of, from memory, and images that, we take memory and we project it into the future. We imagine. That's what humans do. Great imagination. So there's thoughts. And then as we get lost in those thoughts, the body responds to that. So we imagine something, or let's just say the image of something scary pops into awareness. We get lost in that, and then the body responds, and the body generates fear or anxiety or whatever we want to call those feelings. And so in Mindfulness Plain and Simple, we talked about this the paradox of control when it comes to emotion, which is that when the emotion comes up, our first instinct is to want to control it, to want to try and get rid of it. And so what we try to do to get rid of it is to figure out the situation, to think about it so that, we can manage the external so that we don't have to feel that anymore. Yeah. And what happens is then, say we have this fearful thought, then the body responds. And because of that response, because we don't want it, we keep thinking about it more. And then the fear gets stronger. And then the thoughts get stronger. And so we have this kind of cycle of like this snowball rolling down the hill. It's picking up some thoughts, picking up some emotion. It's all energy, energy, energy that's getting picked up by this bundle of thought and feeling. And it's when you're in that, it's really, really difficult to actually see that that's what's happening. And when you look at, you might see it in other people, or you might see it in retrospect, where you go, oh, yeah, okay. I got really stressed, I got really angry, I got really upset about that. And then my emotion led my thinking, and then that fed more emotion. So one of the things that I find really helpful is to almost separate those two things. So I'm just going to flick so I can see where my hands are. So we've got the story, and then we've got the feeling in the body. We're not talking about the feeling as in what we think. I feel this, I feel that. Just talking about the raw feeling inside the body. So if we can pay attention to the feeling, which is what we're doing tonight, we're breathing and feeling the body. If we can do that and just let the story do its thing, and let it burn its energy off without getting, caught up in that, without our attention all being drawn over there. If we use that feeling as an anchor, and we can just sit, and we've done this previous weeks, or we've done these other classes that I've done. We sit and we curiously explore that emotion with no concern about why it's there, with no concern about the story that caused it, no concern about how to solve that. We don't care about the external in that moment. Our only interest is in, it's as if you're having a heart attack and you need to pay attention to what's happening in your body so you can describe it to the ambulance or whatever. it's an extreme example, but you really just want to know, hey, what on earth is going on inside my body right now? And again, when we say what is going on, we're talking about noticing and observing, not about analyzing or thinking about it. Yeah. So when an emotion comes up, we can take attention to it in that way. And if what I find really useful, which I touched on last week for people who were here, was if the story is taking over and the story is it's just got too much energy and I can't separate, I can't watch it without getting caught up in it, is I use the worksheets at thework.com, so Byron Katie's website, to help question those thoughts and just extract ourselves from being totally lost in them and believing them to be true. And then, as we kind of come out of that, we can start to really notice those feelings directly. So that's a kind of long answer to your question, Karen, but we're trying to move wherever we can from thinking into direct experience. So direct experience in the body. That makes sense. And I would say treat every thought and every feeling the same, whether it's 5 minutes old or it's 50 years old. Doesn't matter how it is presenting in the body right now. Is what matters. Does that?
Yeah, that's good, Oli. Will that go into your recording? Because I'm interested in your answer.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
really want my question in there. Is that possible?
Yeah, it will. It's still recording, so it should all go in there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen. Oh. Well, it's past 8:30, so I'm happy to take more questions if people would like. If people have, I know I'd say it's 8:30. It's now, and it's not 8:30 in England. I know, anywhere else. You know what I mean. So I'm happy to take more questions, or if people do need to go, that's quite all right as well. Is there anyone else want to share?
It's just occurred to me, Oli, that on one level, as a human being, I think we've got a problem with sort of resting the mind while we're awake, because we're so bombarded and compelled to respond to external stimuli. And what you call the story or a narrative, we have a process whereby we have to respond to that. So it's something simple like answering the door or logging onto a computer. All those things have processes. Whether you call them a story or not, we have to do them. And so we have a problem then in keeping the mind still, and stories in terms of memories, which are a bit like a process going from A to B, a journey, they come into our minds because we're so used to doing things like that anyway as part of normal survival strategy in our lives. So I think your method of focusing on the breath, just a simple in and out, it's an automatic thing that we do, we don't have to think about it, is a good way of keeping the mind still. And then when we have the mind still, we can then be open then to life without the constant flow and disturbance of narrative and process. So I think it can open you up to new ways of doing things afterwards. It's like a way of cleaning out the mind or stilling the mind, and then you can afterwards you can reflect on situations and find possibly better ways of dealing with them.
I just want to say something on that, because I think that's a really useful area to explore just briefly. I say briefly, I'll probably talk for 20 minutes, but if anyone falls asleep, I won't be offended. But this is a little thing that we say that, if you look at it, is not actually true in experience. And we say, I want to have a quiet mind now. If you notice, the mind, what we call the mind, you look inside, you can't find the mind. What you can see is thought moving. And that's what we call the mind, it's the movement of thought. So actually the mind is never still. If we look inside, there's this space in which the thoughts kind of revolve around and, you know, pop into and disappear back into. There's this space inside. And what we're saying, in a sense, is I want thought to go away for a minute. I want it to shut up. And that's a reasonable request, because it's not always a lot of fun. So what I'm pointing to in the practice tonight, though, is that what we are is the awareness, the attention that's watching all of that thought bubble around. Yeah. So when we say, you know, we're looking for stillness, that awareness, that attention is never ever moving. It's always dead still. That's what I was saying tonight. It's rock solid. It does not move. You, the awareness, you do not move. Your attention gets drawn into thought, and it feels like you're moving like anything. It feels like you're in the washing machine. But actually, in reality, what's happening is there's just a whole lot of thought, you know, bubbling around, and awareness, attention's getting lost in it, and it feels really like a wild ride. But in reality, we're not moving. We're just having a little dream. You know, we're still here, but we're seeing images. You watch someone having a terrible thought experience, if you watch another person, and they don't move, they don't go anywhere. Their eyes glaze over, and then you can see the body and the movement and all that kind of stuff. So if we're saying we want a quiet mind, then, you know, it's not quite right. It's not quite accurate. It's like saying I want a quiet sound, or I want a silent doorbell. It's like if there's either no mind, which is thoughts, you know, there's no thought there, or if mind is there, then it is turbulence. That's its nature. So it's like a still breeze. It's nothing. But what we seek is, and what we experience is, we pull attention back into that awareness, and then the thought slows down, and that we notice the space more, and then, you know, it feels much more pleasant and content and relaxed. But it's just because we're getting back in touch with the awareness that we are. We're getting back in touch with our true nature, and so we're not as we don't feel as caught up in that washing machine. And so that's where I sometimes say, you know, the mind can be, still call it the mind, but thoughts can be really busy and full on, and we can still be, you know, feeling that sense of peace. They don't have to go away for us to feel that. So I know it's kind of hard to put that into words, so if that's a little confusing, that's I apologize, but yeah, I hope that's of use to people as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Did you want to say something, Walter? You got that look about you.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to say one thing I'm really grateful for learning from you, Oli, is in a previous week, you said what we're trying to do when we meditate or do mindfulness is not necessarily to achieve a certain state, like, for example, a state of relaxation or peace. What I remember you saying is that what we're doing is we're simply noticing what's going on inside our head and our body, both the bodily sensations, which are often the emotions, and the thoughts. And I think that was really useful for me because I found safe. Tonight I was not, focusing on those things isn't necessarily comfortable or relaxing, but I felt that I was on the right track by noticing those things rather than seeking, relaxation all the time. I had a couple of questions. One, when I try to notice the thoughts in my head, I can't notice them without getting sucked in like a vacuum cleaner. I can't. It's like, I can't. I mean, maybe once you've had a lot of practice, like you have, maybe you can watch them, but I can't. And so my question is, how do you watch them without getting sucked in? And my second question is, when we notice a thought and we're getting sucked into it, do you want us to then consciously switch to noticing our breath or our bodily sensations? Do you want us to divert ourselves?
Yeah. All right. So yeah, really good questions, Walter. So the easiest for me, the best way to think about it is that think of it like an addiction. So that we're addicted to thinking. We're addicted to paying attention to and getting lost in those thoughts. And so if we think about addiction, it's much easier to replace a habit with something else than to just try and stop. We say, I'm just going to stop eating chocolate, or I'm going to stop whatever it is. It's much easier to invest our energy and our attention into something healthy and positive. So yeah, you're spot on, is that the first thing is that's really important is that when we do get lost in thought, that we don't turn that into a beat yourself up fest, because that's the same, like I said last week, it's the same voice criticizing you that's distracting you in the first place. Very tricky, very clever. So the first thing is, yep, that's normal. That's going to happen. That's okay. And the second thing is that, yep, we notice that we're spending our attention unwisely, let's say compulsively, and we reinvest in the body and the breath. And yeah, when I started practicing, it was like if I could pay attention to one breath without getting lost, that was pretty good. And I'd find myself, drawn miles away and have to go, how on earth did I get here? Like, how am I thinking about this thing? I just don't even know how this happened. And then, as you keep watching and keep practicing, then yeah, over time you kind of start to pick up on it a little bit more. And, and when you'll find also that when you do get lost, that it's not as big of a problem. The emotions won't be as strong. The problems that you create in your life won't be as difficult to resolve later when you wake up. And yeah, things get easier even when you are getting lost. But as I said, I think last week and probably week before, it's still an ongoing process for me as well. It's still happening. So, it's all practice. We're all practicing together.
Do you
Great question.
find you have Thanks. Do you find you have inklings where you can watch the thoughts without being caught up in them? Oh wow!
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and then there's times where something triggers some emotional response, and then away we go again, back in the washing machine. But yeah, often it is more conscious, and there's more awareness of the thoughts that are coming and going, for sure.
Thanks a lot, Oli. Thank you.
Thanks, Walter. All right, so I think a few people have had to duck off and maybe go to bed or go and have some lunch, depending on where they are. So I might leave it there. I'm just going to end that recording, and before I do, I'll be back, and I hope you'll all be back same time next week. And for people who are watching on YouTube, you can join my Facebook group, Mindfulness with Oli Doyle, or you can email me, Oli, OLI, at peacethroughmindfulness.com.au to find out about when classes are on, or ask any questions you want to ask. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.